Eva, thanks for joining me today.
Hi, Maddie. Good to be here.
Yeah, well, based on our first conversation, I wanted to start. I think it would be helpful for you first to give us a quick intro into how you got into doing what you're doing right now.
hmm I really honestly fell into it backwards, sort of. Early in my career, I was in public radio and I loved radio. I thought it was so fun. And I had great mentors at that time who taught me about processes and preparing for the worst, which were really valuable skills later. And so I started in websites and directories. This is before doctors had their own website, so that tells you about when I started, which was the early 2000s. And it was a really interesting time because things were moving so fast. And around that time, we had some LASIK surgeons, and you know how doctors are. They see one person having success and they try to recreate it. So one would call and say, "I want you guys to build me a website," and then the next one would call and say, "You built one for him. I want one too." And we had six of them, and then they all started calling and saying, "I want to be number one in Google." And back then, it was really not that hard to do. I wish that it was still that easy, but I learned SEO from the beginning, and so that was the direction I headed was in SEO. And then I built websites for a very long time, and I ran SEO for a plastic surgery website agency. And then around that same time, realself.com was a startup, and I started working there. And I did both of those things for a while. And then I had to choose, and I went in the website direction. But then at some point, Real Self came back and said, "Can you come back, please?" And in the middle of that stretch, I also surveyed about 200,000 plastic surgery patients, which was crucial to the way that I approached everything from that point forward because I was using patient experience data at scale to help make marketing decisions. And that was an amazing time. Also, we had some bariatric surgeons during that time too. So I learned a little bit about that patient.
Yeah. There may be some people listening who aren't familiar with Real Self. Can you explain
Mhm.
exactly what that is and what you did there?
Sure. It's the largest aesthetic marketplace for consumers and doctors. It's a two-way marketplace. So the founder came from travel from Expedia. And so his background was in, sites like TripAdvisor, Zillow. We had a lot of people who were in that sort of little family of sites in Seattle. This was where I lived at the time. And so we were building the first two-way marketplace and connecting doctors and patients directly. And people were getting information they previously could never get anywhere. And that was really the great thing about it. And I call myself a middle of funnel marketer because it's the conversion that I've always been obsessed with. And that was the first time I really saw conversions at scale. And I could, put something online that would immediately generate hundreds or thousands of conversions. And that's still what I love to do is create those connections and try to make them meaningful and not just blow up somebody's inbox with a bunch of bad leads, but to attract the kind of patient that the practice wants to see long term and build a relationship. So, in the years where I was surveying, one of the crucial things that I learned was that the key driver of what makes someone choose a surgeon is that the surgeon made them feel comfortable. Well, that sort of seems like, of course, that's what it is. But when you have that, in a data framework and at scale, you can really say, I'm going to lean heavily into this idea and make content and do marketing that makes people feel comfortable. And how do you do that? So that really was what led me back to podcasting because I also knew from lots of experience that doctors, most of them don't like being on video. And so if I could take the weird parts of being on video away and just really capture the essence of what they were doing and trying to do for their patients, I was betting on that actually working and creating a different channel. The other fun part of this is that no one was podcasting yet. Hardly any doctors were podcasting to capture patients.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was a journey I set out on, and I have had a really good time doing it because it is driving the impact that I thought it would.
Yeah. And so then the Axis was born, and
Mm-hmm.
give us the 30-second spiel on what is the
Mm-hmm.
Axis?
Before I left Real Self, I built 2 podcasts there. And one actually became, I have a really similar one now called Meet the Doctor. That was kind of born while I was at Real Self, and it was called the Real Self University Podcast. And it's because the program that I stood up and built at Real Self was Real Self University. And that was meant to solve marketing problems for practices at scale. So the problem I spent most of my time on in the 5 years that I was back at Real Self was reviews. And I developed a program to help practices really actually get more reviews, not just make a tool, but to teach them how to change their behavior and build processes so that they could successfully generate lots of reviews in a consistent way. And that was really fun to do. And I spent a lot of time directly in practices and learning, kind of from the inside out. And I've been in lots of practices over the year, but to take a problem like that and really go out there on the street and say, why aren't you guys getting more reviews, and look at it with my own eyes, that was huge.
Mm-hmm.
I remember being in an office where they said, oh, we just tell them when they come in, we just tell them to go back outside and go on Yelp. And I forget what they were telling them to do, but they were gaming Yelp by having people walk out the door and do something and then walk back in the door.
Yeah.
And that was a breakthrough because I realized if the patient could write the review on their own phone, then that was how you got them to feel comfortable. Here we are back at comfortable, and actually get the volume that you needed. So instead of saying, oh, here's this kiosk over here, come over here and type on this computer that you're not familiar with. Well, have you ever had that experience where you are on someone else's computer and it's like wearing someone else's clothes? It's creepy and weird.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
And that's the main focus of this episode is what I think you say that podcasting is one of the new most competitive advantages you can have as
mhm.
let's just call it elective surgery practice. Why is that? Why is that? And what would you say to someone who I would say we've got a handful of clinics that do some sort of podcasting. Some of it's tailored towards post-op care and advice. Some of it's tailored towards lead generation. But why is podcasting a competitive advantage in this space? And what advice do you have for our audience?
How much time do we have? I'm joking. Well, there's a lot of reasons, and I'll start. And it kind of depends on the practice too, what their goals are and what problems they're trying to solve, because you can kind of tweak your strategy a little bit depending on what you're dealing with. So here's an example. In aesthetic practices, they spend a lot of time, money, and they have sometimes many full-time people just on social media. And what starts to happen is they get way over indexed and they're spending all this money to create 3, 4, 5 Instagram posts a week, and they're not getting an ROI from that. So one thing you can use podcasting to do is to take the pressure off of that content creation process and then refocus all those marketing people on developing more channels. I would never say don't do Instagram, but you can't just do Instagram. And the reason you can't just do Instagram is that people over age 35, and that's, I don't know, last time I checked, that's about half the patients in the world. They don't all use Instagram. In fact, it's like 12% say it's their preferred platform. So why would we put everything into Instagram if we're only going to catch a small number of people there? Another thing I hear all the time is when the doctor has podcasted about specific topics that people are coming in for, that their consultations go better, faster, smarter, more valuable, and richer. And just as recently as last week, I had a surgeon tell me that a patient's husband was in there with her, and he kept stopping him and saying, you don't have to answer that. I already know. And he finally said, how come you already know? And he said, I've listened to every episode of your podcast. And he said the guy was like, a construction worker or something. It was very surprising in that context to hear that. And so he actually said, I want to do more podcasts. And I said, sure, great idea. So those are two of the biggest impacts I think that doctors feel directly is they save a lot of time at consult.
Mhm.
And then they can save a lot of time on marketing effort. I just heard data around how much time doctors are spending on marketing. And in the last year, it's something like 9% of their time goes to marketing, which is about in a 50-hour work week, that's like 5 or 6 hours a week. And that to me seems crazy. Like you could actually be generating revenue in that 5 hours and not whatever it is that they're doing, looking at marketing, thinking about marketing. Um, and then, the way that we podcast is super efficient. So we try to do multiple episodes in one sitting. You probably do that too. And we batch record. So then if you're releasing an episode every 2 weeks, you don't have to come back and record for 2 months, sometimes 3 months, if you can get the hang of it and kind of move.
Yep.
And then I think the third one, which is going to seem really also like duh, is YouTube. And all of our podcasts at this point get more views and downloads on YouTube than all the audio platforms combined.
Wow.
And you don't have to be on video because if you remember what I said earlier, like not everyone wants to be on video, and filters are useful and helpful, and we can kind of get over ourselves. But there's something about putting on headphones that makes it a lot easier. Like this is a podcast. I'm not making a fancy video. And then podcasting on YouTube is getting a ton of investment from the YouTube side. They have a 10-year plan for how they're going to grow podcasting.
Hmm.
So what we've seen over there is that oversized growth, because YouTube's so good at suggesting content to people that they're looking for. They watch one video and then it shows you however many more. If you have kids, this is like the worst thing about YouTube.
Right.
This is the best thing about podcasting on YouTube.
Oh yeah, that's I didn't think of it that way. Yeah, I guess the thing I appreciate most about podcasting, number one, from the Boost world, is we're very into patient lead capture, patient lead nurturing, getting those people on the way to getting a consult. Because
Mm-hmm.
as you know, it's 3 to 5% of people that initially hit an elective surgery practice website. It's 3 to 5% of those people that take the call to action, that fill out the form or call to schedule. So our mantra is, what happens to the other 95% of people that you likely paid to get their eyeballs to the site?
Right.
And podcasting is just such a fantastic lead capture piece of, hey, I'm going to spend 45 seconds on this site. Oh, they have a podcast. And now you've engaged, you've subscribed. And yeah,
Mm-hmm.
even in the last year or two, I've been shocked at how many, at even our tiny audience and our tiny podcast audience, how many loyal listeners we have, because people do it at the gym. They drive home from work and listen to it. It's such an easier access media. So
If they listen on your website, now they've stayed on your website longer and your stats are going up. A time on site metric is one of the things Google looks at when it ranks sites. If you use your transcripts on your website, now all that natural language content is sitting there. I just looked at how many inbound links we were generating from the podcasts. And in the one I analyzed, they had over 600 inbound links, good ones. I mean, I deleted all the junk ones. These were like solid, real, and about 20% of them were followed links. So if you're coming from the SEO side, I can make, another 15 arguments about why podcasting is great for that too. We have had several great examples where the doctor is trying to be known for something very specific and already has some content around that. But when the podcast joins that mix of signals, then they rocket to the top of the search results because Google recognizes them as more of an expert than who was there before. So that's an amazing competitive advantage too.
Yep. Yeah. Well, of course, when I post this, I will link to your site, but here at the end, I want to give you a chance. What is it you do exactly for doctors and podcasts?
We have several podcasts of our own. We also develop podcasts for medical practices. the thing I think is the best way to start is to be a guest on our Meet the Doctor podcast, which is completely free, gives us a chance to talk, get to know each other. And then instead of me just telling you what we do, we will actually show you. So if you record an episode of that with us, it goes out on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, all like 20 plus places where podcasts go. It goes on YouTube, and then we'll give it all to you, and you can use it however you want on your podcast. On your website, on your social, on Instagram, you can see all of those highlight reels that we make from that show, and they're really fun. People are having a good time watching those, and that handle is at Meet the Doctor Podcast. There is no other, so it's pretty easy to find. If you look for Meet the Doctor podcast, you'll run right into us. Yeah, sometimes my cat makes an appearance because she doesn't understand when I'm working and not working. And even my kids once in a while will stick their head in, but only if it's in the evening, right?
Yeah, same here.
Yeah.
So because I think the thing that keeps most clinics from pursuing something like a podcast is you sit down and Google how to do your own podcast, and it's crazy that the audio, the special equipment you can order, the software. I'm assuming you take care of all of that for someone. You help them.
We do.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have an end-to-end service. I would not have a company if I hadn't figured out how to do the whole thing except the talking.
Yep.
And because I've been working with practices and aesthetics for so long, I knew how to build that in a way that would. It still has taken a while because, I think I've seen a lot of practices be burned by promises in the past. And I didn't want to do that either. I wanted to make sure we really were doing what we said we were going to do. And I'm proud of that. And my team works really hard to make sure that everyone sounds great, looks great, and doesn't have to do anything. And the content background has made it really easy for us in aesthetics to put together episodes and ideas that are really out in front. So it's a nice kind of way that I've packaged all the things I've ever done into one job, and I'm having a great time doing it. It's been way more fun than I ever thought it would be.
Yeah. Wow. What a great offering and a great niche service. And yeah, we're glad to know you now, and welcome to the network. So
thank you for letting me talk about it. I'm so grateful.
absolutely. Thanks, Eva.